This is Turn 1 Thoughtseize. I'm Ahren.
And I'm Zach.
And this is episode 71, Rivals of Ixa-Tron, because why would we print land hate cards that hate on land-based decks?
No, we need pro land hate.
We'll get there. So we're going to talk about rival spoilers. We're going to talk about Pauper a little bit. We're going to do deck debate, i.e. what deck should Zach play this weekend. We get a couple quick hits, good spice rack, and then we'll wrap it up. We're recording this a day before the last of the Ixalan spoilers, or the Rivals spoilers, come out. But we've seen quite a big swath of the cards. We've seen all but like 3 mythics. We've seen the lion's share of the rares. So there will probably be a couple that get left off here, but we will touch on them next time. And I think the three big ones that that have been spoiled already for Modern, anyways, are already out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the biggest Modern card in the set is available, and we'll touch on it.
Yes. Stay tuned.
I guess there could be a bigger one coming out tomorrow, but I have trouble believing
surprising.
there's a bigger one than this. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and some of those you got to remember is like the rest of the tap land cycle takes up some of that stuff. So there are fewer and fewer options. Evolving Wild's back in Standard though, so that's a good thing.
I don't think Evolving Wild's ever left. Did it? Yeah, no. Evolving Wilds is just like always in Standard now. It's one of those cards that they just leave in.
I didn't think it was in.
I'm pretty sure
Kaladesh block.
No, it was in Amonkhet.
Yeah,
they just like always put it in Standard now. They just like print it in once every rotation cycle. It's kind of like Negate. Like Negate's just always in a set now.
Yep, I'm fine with that. All right, so let's start with the stuff that is terrible that everybody thinks is great.
The overhyped, if you will.
The overhyped. The biggest overhyped one that I've seen initially is Induced Amnesia. It's 2 and a blue for an enchantment. When Induced Amnesia enters the battlefield, target player exiles all cards from his or her hand face down, then draws that many cards. When Induced Amnesia is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return the exiled cards to their owner's hand. Immediately people were like, this is Memory Jar. Memory Jar is one of the great design mistakes of Magic history. There was a turn 1 combo kill when it came out in Urza's Legacy. It had to be like super duper or ultra banned, and it was a nightmare. Anyways, it has a similar effect. It's similar text. Memory Jar.
It has similar text, yeah, but
yeah, because that was the first thing that I thought. I was like, oh, fantastic. It has some relevant differences. It's not both players, it's just you, or it's just a player. I don't know why you would do it to your opponent though. But I guess, I mean, in Legacy, you could do this and then like Notion Thief somebody if you had 1 million mana. But
no, I think this card, like, people look at this card and they think of Memory Jar and they think Memory Jar was broken, so this card is broken, but the key line of text they're missing is draw 7. Like, this doesn't say draw 7, this says draw as many cards as you exiled. And like, at that point, this is like a blue Faithless Looting, kind of. Maybe better, maybe worse.
Yeah.
Probably just worse than Faithless Looting, honestly. I don't think this card is particularly good.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to think of the best case scenario for it, and it's basically this into like perilous research is pretty much so you end up like in the absolute nut scenario. It's like draw 8 for 5 mana over some number of turns. I guess in like a blue control deck, it's not unreasonable that you would have 5 mana available. So like you would play this through your main phase, but then you have to have, yeah, it's not great.
I mean, it just is so much work to be a draw however many, and like when you first cast it, it's 3 mana to discard your hand, draw that many, which it's not even discard, they're just exiled. So you don't even get like the graveyard synergies. It only becomes interesting, truly interesting once you have a way to destroy it.
Right, and that's why I immediately went to Perilous Research. I was like, all right, because that is a card that should definitely see more play.
Sure. But then at that point, it's just like, you need to have a very, very specific reason to be doing all this digging, and like maybe in Standard it could be interesting, and maybe in Legacy it's interesting, but like in Modern you just don't have time to be doing this. Like I don't know what deck you're playing against that you have time to be 3 mana, not even up a card, just 3 mana like card selection kind of, and then setting up like, I don't know. It's kind of interesting with Cryptic Command, I guess. You can like counter the spell and bounce it to draw like the cards that you had exiled.
No, it has to be put into the graveyard. You can't bounce it.
Oh, you can't. Yeah, yeah. All right, never mind. I don't think this card is that great.
No. So
it is nice that like the cards you drew the first time, like when you set your cards aside, right? Like I don't know if this is immediately clear, but so if you had 3 cards in hand, you exile the 3 cards and you draw 3. If you can put it into the graveyard at that point, the cards that you drew don't get like exiled at that point; they just stay in your hand.
Right.
Which is how you go up on cards, right? But it's just like that's so much work. Like,
but the fact that you have to have a second, like after you can't be holding the thing that you need to sack it.
Yeah.
So
like,
you
have to find that off of the draw.
Into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is interesting, I guess, if like it's at best a draw 6, right? Because it's just like very hard to have 8 cards in your hand when you cast it. I guess you could, but
yeah,
I don't know. This just doesn't.
Well, I guess you could Perilous Research in response to the ETB trigger. I'm trying to think, how does that work?
No, you really don't want to do that.
No, you really don't want to do that because then you just
you return no card. Then the cards you exile are just exiled permanently.
Yes.
So you don't want to do that.
But what if that's what you want?
Well, your opponent could do like you. What? Do you have like a Mist Hologriffin in your hand or something?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Mist Hologriffin. Eternal Scourge.
They're exiled face down, so I don't even know if you could cast them at that point. I think that's just going too deep. It's also like kind of a blowout if it just like got. Like if it just got bounced by your opponent, then those cards are exiled permanently. Like,
yep, yeah. If it gets
there's some number of risk, there's some number of uncertainty, and it's just I don't think the effect's that powerful.
Yes, well, I think the effect is powerful. I think that having it on a 3 mana sorcery speed thing with 2 clauses that can be interacted with is like way too high on the risk reward.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
There would have to be an Induced Amnesia deck that specifically had some win condition that involved just exiling cards. And I can't there's already better ways to do it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I'm sure at some point in Modern's future there will be a way where this is broken, but as of right now, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not broken.
The other one that I saw was Mastermind's Acquisition. It is 2 black for a Demonic Tutor or Diabolic Tutor That's the overpriced one, right?
Yeah, it's Diabolic Tutor.
It's a Diabolic. So it's a Diabolic Tutor that also has a Wish attached to it. So you can pay 4 mana at sorcery speed to either search your library for a card, put it in your hand, and shuffle, or choose a card you own from outside the game and put it in your hand. Generally speaking, like, we already have Wishes in Modern.
We only have one. We only have one Wish in Modern.
No, we have 2.
Oh, what's the second one?
Pull from the Blind Eternities. It's Eldrazi only. It's Eldrazi Wish.
Sure. Okay, yep.
So Glittering Wish and Eldrazi Wish, and now this. The problem with Wishes is they are, like, even Glittering Wish is a 2 mana spell that sees 0 play because the effect is not that good in Modern. Like, you can get like a silver bullet, but I mean, you're gonna pay 4 mana to go get your silver bullet, cast your silver bullet. I mean, is there a deck that's gonna be susceptible to a silver bullet on turn 6? Like, optimistically turn 6?
Well, the problem, like, Glittering Wish actually has seen some play in Modern's history. It sees close to 0 as you can get now. But there was a time where it was, like, kind of busted with Jeskai Ascendancy. But that was only because you wanted to get Jeskai Ascendancy specifically, right?
Yes.
It wasn't because the card Glittering Wish was any good. It was just, it was more copies of Jeskai Ascendancy, which was, like, kind of just like a win the game for 3 mana enchantment, which, you know, at that point, it's powerful. So if you have a way to win the game for a small amount of mana, then this card could see play. But, like, again, like, we just talked about how 3 mana do nothing was too slow. This is 4 mana do nothing, and the thing with Wishes is, like, how, like, the way you explain it with silver bullets, it makes sense that you would want to use silver bullets to answer problem permanence, but Modern just isn't a format where that is a real strategy. You don't really do that as much. You know, you can go get answers, but it's just better to be proactive in this format right now. Right now, at least. There's just too many good proactive strategies that are doing, you know, advancing their game plan while you're spending mana to do nothing to hopefully find an answer next turn. And it's like, yeah, you can get really powerful cards with this, but, like, just imagine this scenario where it's like, one of the best scenarios I can think of is, I can just go immediately tutor for Rest in Peace versus Dredge. That sounds awesome. But the quickest this can even, like, happen is turn 5.
Yeah.
4 maybe if you have, like, Mana Dorks or something. And at that point, Dredges probably already has 14 power on the battlefield, you know?
Yeah. You should have a much more comprehensive game plan. Or you do what everybody else does and just lose game 1 and then win game 2 and 3.
Yep. And the other thing that's kind of annoying about it is that I believe Wishes work where you only can get cards from your sideboard at this point.
Oh yeah, no, that's been long standing.
Yeah, so not only do you have to, like, sacrifice sideboard space, which is an issue in this format where you want as much sideboard space as you can get. I guess you're not sacrificing it as much, it just kind of gives you access to your sideboard in game 1, but it just comes at the cost of having to play a bad card. Like, Diabolic Tutor has been legal for a long time, and it has, I think, never seen any play at all. Like, not even close to seeing play.
I've never seen a deck play it.
And the fact that you get this Wish card, where it's like, the only bonus is you get to tutor for cards that you wouldn't want game 1 in your deck, right? And it's just like, I don't know. It's hard to imagine that effect is worth enough to make a completely unplayable card playable.
It is not, I assure you. Holy crap, when did that card even originally get printed? Diabolic Tutor was in Odyssey. What? That's crazy.
8th edition, 9th edition. I mean, it's been in Modern the entire time.
Yep, yeah.
I guess
8th and 9th.
Like,
Interesting.
I'm trying to come up with the scenarios where this could work, and it's like, well, maybe Ad Nauseam could play this as additional copies of the card Ad Nauseam. But it's like, they could have already played Diabolic Tutor, and they don't because it's not good enough.
Right.
So you could just play 4 Diabolic Tutor in your deck. So it's not even like...
Yeah. Well, and you would play Infernal Tutor anyways, which is what they do if they need them.
Well, they play Spoils of the Vaults.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
But essentially, like, yeah, this is Tutor for 4 mana, that's Tutor for 1. Like, it's just better.
Yep. Gotta roll them dice, baby. All right. So...
I'm sure there... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to move on, but...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm sure there are other cards people will hype up and will be overhyped, but right now that's the one. Those are the 2 we saw that generated a decent amount of buzz right out of spoilers, and just there's just nothing there that we can see at all.
All right. Why don't you start off with your
the Arch?
The Arch. I am skeptical, but I could be convinced.
Hey, all right. So the card I immediately saw and was like, wow, this card actually has modern applications. Is called Arch of Orazca, and it has the Ascend mechanic on it, which says if you control 10 or more permanents. Now, keep in mind that is permanents. It's not non-land permanents. So if you control, 5 creatures or tokens or whatever and 5 lands, then you get the City's Blessing. And that's literally what Ascend says. It's just like, if you control 10 more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. And Arch of Orazca, outside of Ascend, says tap to add a colorless mana to your mana pool. And it is specifically colorless, so like it can cast a Thought-Knot Seer or a Mad Reshaper.
Relevant,
yep. And it has a second ability that says 5 and tap, draw a card. Activate this ability only if you have the City's Blessing. So essentially, once you get the City's Blessing, this is just 5 mana tap, draw a card, which definitely seems overpriced, right? Like it's hard to say 5 tap, draw a card on anything is that powerful, but you have to remember that this comes at a very little cost. Putting a land that taps for colorless into your deck is not, it's not that hard to do, right? Like, it's easy to fit. There are decks that already do this with Seagate Wreckage or, Gaia Reach Sanitarium. It's easy to fit one land in your deck that taps to draw a card, or taps to make colorless. And this has just draw a card on it, which the deck I'm thinking of specifically is Ixa-Tron, if you couldn't get from the hints I was dropping earlier. But Ixa-Tron is a deck that plays Expedition maps, so you can tutor for this card on a whim. And it is very interested in a card draw engine because it will run into situations where... Well, it's interested in card draw engines on a land, specifically, because it runs into situations where it either needs mana to deploy its resources or has infinity mana and no resources to deploy.
Sure.
So having card draw abilities on a land kind of solves both of those issues for the deck, and that's why you see Ixa-Tron decks playing Seagate Wreckage right now, is because it solves that issue for them. But Seagate Wreckage has the annoying clause that you can only activate it when you have no cards in hand specifically. So in that deck, you'll activate it. You'll draw a land for turn, and then you'll activate your Seagate Wreckage, and you'll draw another land. And then you get into this point where you just have too many lands in your hand to continue activating it, and all you're looking for is to draw action.
Right.
And it doesn't work it doesn't do that job very well. So I think that this card is going to do that job a little bit better. And again, it's a land that taps for colorless, so the cost of putting it in the deck is very low. So I would not be shocked if it's an immediate upgrade to Seagate Wreckage in the deck. And I think it's going to see some play.
As a one of, I'm pretty much there. I think if you're really committed to turning this on, the better place to do it is ban Eldrazi.
Sure.
Because then you get Scion tokens, and The other thing that you could do is Blight Herder. Play some number of Blight Herders, because it's cheap if you're playing main deck relics anyways, so you're gonna have something to process.
Sure.
So you do that and you're already like almost halfway there. Plus you've got, like, if you got 4 lands, you process a Blight Herder, that's 4 more. It should be very easy to turn it on in that case, and you only need to do it that one time. So then whatever, if your tokens get blown out or something, it doesn't matter, because the blessing is as soon as the condition is met, you have it and it's there for the rest of the game.
It's almost like an emblem.
Yeah, they will like bend over backwards to explain how it's not like an emblem. It's just it's a weird. That's a whole other segment.
It's different from an emblem, but for all intents and purposes, it's an emblem.
You have it. It can't be interacted with. It's not a counter. It doesn't exist in any zone that can be interacted with. It's just.
You just have this thing now. You are blessed by the city, apparently.
Yeah, it's fine. Everything's fine. You had Dire Fleet Daredevil on here. I immediately wrote this card off as trash. So convince me that this card is even borderline playable and not bulk.
So that's interesting that you wrote this off as trash. Right, okay, so it says instant on it. Does that mean it has flash? We don't even have the translation right now with this, but I was under the impression this is a red Snapcaster Mage just for their graveyard.
Let me find the other translation.
Okay, yeah, just first strike, no flash.
Yeah, it doesn't have flash.
Okay, so not having flash makes this card a lot worse, and I think that this card should remind you of Snapcaster Mage when you look at it, right? It's a 2-mana 2/1, creature that has a ETB that essentially gives flashback to a card in a graveyard.
Yes.
Now, I don't think that this card is necessarily amazing. I don't think this is like Snapcaster in the sense that Snapcaster is like the best creature in Modern, the most played creature in Modern, right? That card is just clearly just better than like almost every other creature in the format. It's very, very good. Now this
Yes.
This is nowhere near as good as Snapcaster Mage. There are some things about it that are just much worse. Like, for instance, you can't exile your own instants and sorceries, so you cannot, build your deck in such a way that this card is always going to be good, right? And you cannot, you can't just always, have a lightning bolt in your graveyard to flash it back like you can with the Snapcaster. So there's no guarantee that it's always going to be on. But at the same time, it is a 2-mana 2/1 first strike, which, while not necessarily up to Modern standards, is not a bad body by any means. It's fine, right?
Yeah. The only conceivable place I can see this having a home is in a red-white Ether Vial deck. So maybe humans, maybe, but let me tell you a heartbreaking tale of woe from Magic Origins. It is a card that I wanted to love, which is Talent of the Telepath, which you will not remember because it saw 0 play. 0. Saw 0 standard play, saw 0 modern play. Has, to my knowledge, never been registered at a competitive level event. ever. Talon of the Telepath is 2 blue for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals the top 7 cards of his or her library. You may cast an instant or sorcery card from among them without paying its mana cost. Then that player puts the rest into his or her graveyard. So it's mill 6. You get a free spell, and if you have spell mastery, if there are 2 or more instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard, which you would obviously have, you may cast up to 2 revealed instant or sorcery cards instead of 1. On its face, right, seems nutty. You know, boom, you flip Cruel Ultimatum. Delicious. And then you can, like, snap Talon of the Telepath. But you can never rely on your opponent's deck to have things that are worth casting for you. That makes sense.
No, you're totally right about that. And I think that is one of the major drawbacks of this card. But this card is also Graveyard Hate in red, which is not something red typically has a ton of access to. It generally has to move towards artifacts to have Graveyard Hate and or like surgical extraction effects. So
is it really hate though at like 2 mana sorcery speed?
It can be. I mean, this is like, look, I'm not telling you this is the best card, and I think it actually could have gone on an overhyped list where people are saying this card's amazing. It's like going to be one of the best cards in the set. I don't think it's close to there, but I think there is enough there that it could end up seeing some modern play. Now, I don't think this is a main deck card. I don't think this is the type of card you build a deck around like Snapcaster is, but it offers, a 2-for-1. It offers you stealing, like, stuff from your opponent. Mm-hmm. And it is relevant in the sense that there are cards in people's graveyards that you would want to cast in this format. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's...
If you're playing against a blue deck, playing this guy and then immediately casting their Serum Visions is good value. You're happy to do it. If you're playing against, a deck with Lingering Souls, getting their Lingering Souls is pretty nice. So, there are scenarios where it could be useful.
It's gonna feel really good when you get them, and then it's gonna be bad Thalia when you don't. Like, or it's gonna be, what is that card? Is it Acacian Javelineers, 2/1 first strike? Or no, Piker. It'd be a Goblin Piker.
Yeah. I mean, it probably is Goblin Piker most of the time, but like I said, this is a relevant card because it is red Graveyard Hate, essentially, and it's a 2-for-1 when you bring it in. I don't think it's a main deck card. I think, like I said, it's mostly a sideboard card, but it is at least relevant for the modern format, which is more than you can say for most of the cards in the set, right?
Fair. Yeah, I wouldn't play it without an Aether Vial, personally.
That's fair. But it could be sweet in a humans deck. Like, it also has the keyword human on it.
Sure.
So, I mean, that is an Aether Vial deck. You can play it on their turn. At instant speed, like, when I saw it and it had the instant on it, I was like, wow, this, like, can legitimately just counter Snapcaster Mage, because you can just steal what they're targeting and retarget it and cast it.
Yes. If this card had flash, it would be not only playable, it would be, like, Snapcaster 5/6 probably in most blue-red decks.
I wouldn't go that far, because like I said, it has the clause of having to rely on your opponent, but sure. Again, it is interesting. It is doing something interesting and unique. So
yes,
it's viable.
So speaking of humans, Warkite Marauder, 1 and a blue for another human pirate, 2/1 flyer. We've seen some good results out of those stats. And whenever it attacks, target creature defending player loses all abilities and has base power and toughness 0/1 until end of turn. Interesting. I'm actually pretty down with this card. I missed it. I didn't see it until you put it on the list. I like the ability. I like that it's evasive, because you're going to be able to pretty reliably attack with it. Like flyers, there aren't a ton of flyers unless you're playing against Lingering Souls, and there aren't a lot of Lingering Souls decks out there right now. So I like this card. I'm in.
Yeah, I think it does. It does an interesting thing. I think the card is turn burn, right? It's the turn half of turn that just makes it into an 0-1.
Probably.
I think there's also like Ophionize from like Planar Chaos or something. Ophonize.
Oh yeah, no, I mean there's a bunch of Turn to Frog.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things where it does that, but like those cards have never been good enough, right? But that's because you're spending a card to do that, and it doesn't accomplish what you want, which is killing. But this is doing that on a 2/1 body, and it has a relevant creature type. Yeah. And again, my immediate thought was the humans deck because it has the human keyword in it, right? And that deck has, or at least typically has, one or two Izzet Staticasters in the sideboard. So the fact that you can pair just attacking with this and Izzet Staticaster to literally kill any creature they play at any time ever, that's, I guess, not a hexproof creature.
Sure. Unless you have your own hexproof creature and you just next level it, you play one Slippery Bogle out of the side for your own Izzet Staticaster to hit just to get Bogles.
Yeah, no, I mean that wouldn't.
Don't do that.
No, yeah, because we have an enchantment on it, it still probably wouldn't work. But regardless, it is interesting too because it loses all abilities. So like a card like Wormcoil Engine that has a death trigger, you can just kill it and it doesn't get the death trigger. So I don't know if this is quite modern playable, but it is doing something interesting and unique, and it has relevant stats, mana cost, and creature type. So. I
like it. I'm declaring this card playable.
Sure. I definitely think it's playable. Whether it's good or not is a completely different story.
Sure. There's obviously the Merfolk contingent. They picked up another 2-mana Lord that I can't remember the name of.
I think it's Mistbinder. Merfolk Mistbinder.
Something like that. Bottom line, it's blue-green for a 2/2, all other merfolk you control get +1/+1.
Yep. That card's not super exciting, but I think that it is definitely playable if you're in blue-green merfolk.
Yes.
I think merfolk is going to start trending in two different directions. There's going to, kind of be the classic build that people are comfortable with, the mono blue one that has a higher land count, is interested in Master of Waves. Yep. And then it looks like there's going to be a blue-green one now that is much lower to the ground.
Oh yeah, I mean it's already there.
Yeah.
The tropical merfolk.
Merfolk. It's the more popular version now, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean it partially because it's the new hotness, and partially because like green really does give you access to a lot of things. Like in the past, I have advocated for a white splash because burn is traditionally one of their worst matchups, and I was like, just play Phyrexian Unlife out of the side.
Sure.
Like, and you get like Path, Phyrexian Unlife, like all the good white cards. And then you also
get Stony Silence, which is awesome for merfolk because they struggle with affinity badly.
Sure. But I also had said at one point relatively recently that, they should just play Collected Company. Like it's everything they want. But now we are in the world of, so they picked up, Kumena's Speaker, which is a 1-mana 2/2. Basically, they're playing Merfolk Branchwalker, which is the 2/1 Explore.
This is a Silvergill impersonation. Does it mean Silvergill?
It does. And the new Silvergill Adept art is so dope. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
I think the only cut theoretically is Muro Reejery could become that 2-mana Lord. The upside is you get to keep your Ether Vial on 2, which is great. The tap untap with Merfolk Reejery is really good. I have seen it do a number of very strong, borderline busted things. Is it better than just having another 2-mana lord? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know if maybe it's some number of Harbinger of the Tides. The list that I'm looking at, the most recent 5-0 list, had a Vendilion click, 4 unclaimed territory in it, and it looks like they shaved a Curse Catcher and a Cumanus Speaker, and they had 1 Smuggler's Copter. And then they were playing main deck Vapor Snag, which is normal, and 1 main deck Echoing Truth, which is not normal, but seems good. I
think that's fine.
It's a strong tempo play. And then occasionally it's just going to be a complete blowout against a lot of decks. So I'm fine with it.
Sure.
It's a way that you can, they can deal with Planeswalkers, which is not something that you get in blue-green. So there you go. Play main deck Echoing Truth and Merfolk. Apparently it's quite good. So Kumena, Tyrant of Orazka, is a 3-mana 2/4 relevant, because he doesn't die Lightning Bolt like everything else in the deck. He's 1 blue or 1 green-blue. He has tap another untapped Merfolk you control. Kumena can't be blocked this turn. Tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control. Draw a card. Tap 5 untapped Merfolk. Put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. It definitely feels more mid-rangey and less aggro, because it's a lord that doesn't actually buff your guys when it comes into play. So on the Ether Vial ambush plan, this guy's really kind of meh. But I guess if you're gonna switch all your lords to 2 mana and then have this guy as your Master of Waves, bigger thing, but Master Waves just auto win. That's the thing.
So when I look at this card, I think you're right, is that he's kind of awkward in Merfolk, and to tap another Merfolk to make him unblockable ability is kind of nonsense when you're playing Spreading Seas and all your Merfolk have Island Walk. Right. So you're not really interested in that. And the tap 5 untapped Merfolk you control to put a +1/+1 counter on all of your Merfolk could be interesting in some scenarios. I'm thinking mostly defensively, but the way this deck plays out is once you have 5 Merfolk in play, your opponent's dead.
You've already won the game.
You have a bunch of lords, and so if you have 5 Merfolk in play, then you probably have, I don't know,
you've at least 10
they're all
power.
4/4s, yeah, they're all 4/4s, so it's 20 power at that point, so they're dead essentially. I mean, you have 20 power unblockable, so they're probably dead. But the part where this is interesting is the tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control, draw a card, and when that's what you're using this for, it's a very powerful card draw engine in the deck, which the deck could be interested in on occasion. Where if you're playing against a Snapcaster Lightning Bolt deck out of the blue-green deck, well, this is a good sideboard card there because it's hard for them to kill this, and this isn't the Merfolk have to be in play. It's a hasty ability, so you're just going to kind of just sit there, and then, if you have a Curse Catcher in this in play, then every Merfolk you play, you get to draw the kind of cantrips, essentially.
Right.
Which is interesting, I think, and, it's instant speed, so you can, play your Merfolk, pass, block, tap, draw a card. So in grindier matchups, the card could be interesting. I don't think this is a busted mythic Merfolk's tier 1 all of a sudden type situation, but I do think it gives the element or the deck an element that it was lacking, whereas before they were playing, I think they actually had just started to adopt Deep-Root Waters to make a bunch of hexproof 1/1s.
I've seen that in the side.
Yeah, it's a sideboard grindy type card to help beat the Jeskai decks. And I think that's a fine card. I think that's a fine card to play, and I think this pairs very well with that plan. So I think it's kind of more of what they're looking for in that scenario, and I am interested in it. I think it could be playable. I don't know how good it actually is, but we'll find out, I guess. I think this could easily be a one-of in tropical Merfolk sideboards going forward.
Yeah. Oh man, this person is my hero. So Joris Koak, whoever you are, played a Bant Merfolk, which is also something that I talked about a while ago. And he played Water Trap Weaver, which is one of the Ixalan Merfolk. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls, doesn't untap during the controllers. Like, that's whatever. 2 Psionic Blast.
That's
amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
And then sideboard, 2 Aethersworn Canonist, 1 Heroic Intervention, 1 Thalia.
Hey, you gotta beat Storm somehow, man.
Fantastic. And came in top 4.
Well, actually, now that we're on that subject...
Yes.
This is something we're going to hit on later in the show, but I kind of want to hit on it while we're just on the Merfolk topic.
Lay it on me.
I had a friend that... I have a good friend that I have traveled to Magic events with on occasion, and he plays at my store. And he was mentioning to me that he really wanted a new Lord in this set. And I was saying, well, would it really make you play the deck? Is that what the deck's missing? And he said that no, it's not really what the deck's missing. Like, obviously you have access to a bunch of Lords already. It doesn't really need more Lords, but lowering the curve is relevant, and it could make the deck better. And I was like, well, why are you not happy with the deck right now? What's the real issue? And he's like, well, you just kind of lose to Brawl. You lose to the creatures out of Storm because you can't kill them effectively. You don't have kill spells to really deal with them, and if those cards sit in play, Storm just wins. And it kind of doubles for Devoted Druid, where if a Devoted Druid sits in play in a Devoted Druid Core Cowling deck, you just lose.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying the problem is that Merfolk, the way it's built right now, is that you will play Vapor Snag, you'll play Dismember, but you maybe have 2 Dismembers at most. You're not going to be able to keep up with, the amount of Devoted Druids these Chords decks can get, or the amount of Medallion creatures that Storm makes, and you're just going to lose to them. He's like, and there just isn't other playable, removal spells in the format. And I pointed out, hey, I've been playing this deck where I'm playing Spatial Contortion in my sideboard because I have colorless lands. This Merfolk deck you're playing actually has a lot of colorless lands, and it wouldn't be that hard to get Spatial Contortion into your deck. Mm-hmm. You're already playing Mutavault, you're already playing Cavern of Souls, some of them are playing Unclaimed Territory even, so that right there is 12 colorless sources that also give you 8 colored sources and 4 creatures. Mm-hmm. So if that's what the deck is looking for, that is interesting. And if you're blue-green, like in your Tropical, it's not that hard to play whatever the blue-green Pain land is.
Yavimaya Coast.
There it is, Yavimaya Coast. Yep. So you could fit a Yavimaya Coast in there. And if you're looking for interaction, Spatial Contortion is an easy fit into the deck that gives you a kill spell that blue-green decks typically don't get access to. Right. And you also just don't have to stretch your mana to do this. You don't have to play a new color altogether. You just change the lands you're playing, and all of a sudden, you kind of just have an extra color by accident. So
I think that's probably why, that tension that you're talking about in terms of available removal or perceived available removal in those colors is why this person was playing Psionic Blast.
Sure.
It's 3 mana, but it will kill an X4, and the only other way that mono blue or blue green decks are reliably going to kill an X4 is Dismember. And the important thing for Psionic Blast is it kills Thought Not Seer.
Yeah, well, it also goes face. It kills you.
And it also goes face. This card is great, by the way. This is another card. Should see more play. Psionic Blast is great.
Definitely.
3 mana instant, 4 damage target creature or player, 2 damage to you. Ironically, this is one of those ones that they had to color shift in Ravnica to actually make it appropriate. This Char is a color shifted Psionic Blast. But oldie but goodie. This is an alpha special that is brought to you in Modern by way of Time Spiral. So it sort of slid its way in under the radar. What is that? and has a sweet textless full art. So
the full art is sweet.
Oh, I love it. I played it in a bunch of like Death Shadow decks. I had like blue black Delver with Death Shadow. I played this in it. Played it in so that was like Bug Delver. Like Bug Delver with Death Shadow. I played a bunch of these. And that was great. So there you go. And plus you get a bunch of islands. Nobody's expecting 4 to the face.
No. You will always get them.
You will get them. What else? Dire Fleet Poisoner. The Return of Ambush Viper. But this time, it's better. I love this card. So, more black cards with flash. Amazing. Previously a rarity. We've now gotten one in each of the sets from Ixalan and Rivals. Dire Fleet Poisoner, 1 in a black, flash, death touch, and when Dire Fleet Poisoner enters the battlefield, target attacking pirate you control gets +1/+1 and gains death touch until end of turn. So you ambush Viper something after blocks, before damage, and then you still have a 2/2 with death touch on defense. Like this card is at least like it's almost always going to trade up, which is great. Like anytime you can trade, a 2-mana card for a 4-mana card or a 5-mana card, that's awesome. And having like a playable combat trick, there's a lot of there's not a lot of straight up combat tricks that are playable because they require you to like have a board state in order for them to do something. This has both, and I am super down with it.
Oh yeah. The other thing too is people just like don't play around with combat tricks in Modern because there aren't combat tricks in Modern, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're playing against Infect, you know to play around combat tricks, but that's kind of like the one scenario.
Yep.
And this is not an Infect card. This is a card you would put in humans, maybe. I don't know where you're gonna find other attacking pirates, but just the flash death touch aspect of it just makes it like a 2-mana Doomblade, essentially.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a lot of times where you're just gonna play it in combat, block their guy, and kill it. And if that's the case, you can trade it with a Thought-Knot Seer, you can trade it with a Reality Smasher. Trades with kind of anything. That's what Death Touch does, right? So it's definitely a playable Modern card. I think this is at a playable Modern power level.
And, pirates, man. There's more of them.
Yeah, I mean, they're coming.
Yep. This card I am genuinely excited for. And I don't think it's going to get its due immediately. Dusk Legion Zealot is basically a black elvish visionary, and it is a vampire. So 1 in a black for a 1/1 vampire soldier, relevant, not so relevant creature types. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose a life. Fantastico.
Yeah, these types of cards are always better than they look. Always.
Yeah.
Like 100% of the time, if a creature says draw a card on it, it's better than it looks.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what else you could possibly ask for, in like that. Like Elvish Visionary, like you said, on its face is a bad card, right? Like who's going to play a 2-mana 1/1? But it's such a strong role player in the Elves deck. I don't think you cut it, right? Like that's not.
Well, there are matchups you can trim it, but
you're not going to cut it from the main deck.
No. It's a very powerful card. They generally play 4 because it's hard to find that on creatures. There are not a lot of creatures that ETB draw a card that are just a free body, essentially, right? Where it's like you had to spend mana to get this, but you didn't have to spend a card.
Right.
And in those scenarios, it's just makes decks function better, right? You can, tap. It just helps you hit your land drops. It helps you find whatever the key piece of your deck is. It, essentially has the effect of making the deck a little smaller. I think that this card is not going to be a Modern player yet. It's missing the other the payoff for having the body right now. There are some vampire payoffs, but it's a lot better when you have, say, like a Heritage Druid that asks you to tap bodies or something.
It's that Crypt Breaker thing, right? Like,
sure.
The reason that Crypt Breaker is good, like, even though it doesn't see play, it is a modern power level card that just doesn't have a home. But anytime the like tap creatures to do something, that's always at least worth considering. Often, like, quite good and sometimes completely busted, right? Like Heritage Druid is nuts.
Yep. Well, that's why we were saying Kumena should have a home in Merfolk, is that you have to find the spot where it's good, but this ability is powerful. And this is the exact card you want when you have an ability like this. Now, it doesn't have to play in those scenarios, right? Like, you don't have to have exactly like a tap effect where you need more bodies. It's also good with any Lord. Vampires don't have a ton of Lords yet. There are some Lords, and some of them are very powerful.
Yes.
But there's not a ton of them. Now, the card that immediately for me I thought was like, wow, this card might be insane is Captivating Vampire. I think
Sure.
it plays very, very well with the card Captivating Vampire specifically, which is a Lord that also just has a tap ability.
Right.
Now, Captivating Vampire has seen no modern play, but maybe that's because Gus Legion Zealot wasn't printed yet, right? So
I don't know if that's the thing that put it over. But I mean, right? It's we touched on this every time we talk about tribal decks, right? Like, we talk about a density of powerful 2-drops.
Yeah.
And so this is a very powerful 2-drop. Vampires also picked up a 2-mana Lord. Legion Lieutenant is just straight the simplest Lord that you can have. So Legion Lieutenant, black white, 2/2 Vampire Knight. Other vampires you control get +1/+1. It's as bone stock a Lord as they come, but being 2 mana is the nuts. So I'm super excited about that guy, especially considering all of the other vampire stuff. Previously, like, there had been red-black vampires decks that are fine. I think having white in there, like Mardu vampires, I think could be a very real deck. One, obviously, like, you get a ton of utility out of those colors. Like, playing a Mardu good stuff deck with a tribal element, I think, is defensible. Some of the higher curve ones probably don't make the cut in that scenario, because some of the bigger Lords, like Vampire Nocturnus, is like 4 mana. Like, I don't know if that guy makes it into this deck. But some of the other, like the Innistrad vampire stuff, is kind of like, because their theme was when it does damage to a player, it gets a counter, which is kind of like, like, I don't love that, and it's tough to play. But there was some good ones in Shadows. There's Madness stuff. There's plenty of Madness enablers in all those colors. So I think there is something there. I have not tinkered with it yet.
I think Ixalan also had some very, very powerful vampires.
Yes.
That people just forgot about and never adapted because there just wasn't the other vampires there. But we're starting to get to a place where vampire is now very relevant text on a creature. It never was before. It was like the same text as just any generic creature type that doesn't see play, but it could be now. I mean, I think the card Sanctum Seeker is a very, very, very powerful Magic card that sees absolutely zero play. It doesn't even see play in Standard, but that card could easily be could easily be modern power level if the other vampires are good. And like I said, I think Captivating Vampire is also a very broken Magic card. What it does is just like ridiculously powerful in creature mirrors. So, you know, I think there's something there. I think there's a vampire deck waiting to be built, and vampires also have, you know, the nice, I guess, fortune it is to be in the color black, which is probably the strongest color in Modern. Yep. So, you know, you get to play your vampire deck with your Thoughtseizes and your Inquisitions and your Fatal Pushes, and you get to use your Captivating Vampire and your vampires that draw cards to gain control of their creatures. We don't know if we're there yet, but we certainly could end up getting there. And
well, if you're going to go to 4, right, you get Falkenrath Aristocrat, which is nuts. You get Olivia.
Yep,
she's great. There are enough small creature decks running around that like Olivia is probably good again. You know, she's
a bit mana intensive. Sure. She could be fine. I was thinking Sanctum Seeker. Sanctum Seeker might not be the right spot, but the big draw to me in any vampire deck is still just going to be Bloodghast. I mean, Bloodghast is just by far the most powerful vampire ever printed, right? It's the only one that's seen Eternal play. Its ability is kind of unassuming, but extremely difficult to deal with.
Yep.
And, you know, its drawback of not being able to block is awesome if you can gain a lot of life, which Ixalan's vampires conveniently do. So,
yes.
You know, I think vampires are starting to get there. We don't have a build yet, but I would not be shocked if in the next 6 months a vampires deck, you know, all of a sudden pops on the scene and kind of does, you know, maybe what a humans deck did, where, you know, you find the right build of it and all of a sudden it's a modern powerhouse.
Well, now there's also like, because of the sort of like life gain, synergies, there were a lot of that vampire life gain synergy stuff was, also in, Oath of the Gatewatch and the other set, Battle for Zendikar.
Sure.
There were there's one in particular that I'm thinking of. It's 2 white-black for like a 2/4, and whenever you gain a life, each opponent loses life.
Oh, sure.
Like, that's definitely
I think it's Cliffhaven.
Cliffhaven, yes, that's right. Yeah, Cliffhaven.
Yeah,
Vampire.
I mean that's like a pseudo lord effect if you have a bunch of lifelinking creatures for sure.
Yeah, 2 white-black, 2/4 flying vampire warrior ally. Relevant, not relevant. It's less than relevant. But like evasive, 4 power. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Like, that's like this with Lightning Helix in Mardu Vampire's deck. Pretty strong.
Well, they would only lose 1 life, but with Helix, but with Sanctum Seeker triggers individually, so like this card with Sanctum Seeker out is kind of outrageous.
Yep.
Like,
so
they lose 2 life for each attacking vampire. I mean, that's really powerful. Now, is that a little bit of a Magic Christmas land because you have 2 4-drop vampires in play and attacking, and you're not winning or whatever? Sure. I think it's, you know, it's questionable, but there's also a bunch of 1-drop vampires now, so maybe like vampires could just be an aggressive deck, and I think it probably will end up being that. I mean, if you want to look at modern power level cards, you need to look at the 1s and 2s, right? Like that's where modern decks are built, you know, the 1 and 2 curve slots. So
yep. Well, there's the Vampire Squadron Hawk from Ixalan. Like,
Legion Conquistador?
Yeah, like,
sure.
I mean, that is a very strong card.
Yeah, if you're trying to accumulate bodies, it does a great job of it.
So, and you know, I mean, you could go in a bunch of different directions with it too, right? Like, it could be aristocrats. You could have, like, Blood Artist, with...
Blood Artist is a very good vampire, I agree.
Like, well, think about it. Like, you have Blood Artist with Cliffhaven Vampire with, you know, any kind of sack outlet, of which there are plenty. Like Bloodthrone Vampire, obviously, is the Viscera Seer, Bloodthrone Vampire, the classics.
Oh, Viscera Seer is a vampire, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that might be one of the better vampires, actually. Vampires is getting interesting.
They got really good. Like, the ones that I was talking about that, like, I don't think that I think get edged out of the top slot is like Vampire Nocturnus. Like, is 4 mana. It's triple black for a 3/3. Like, you play with the top card of your library revealed as long as top card of your library is black. Vampire Nocturnus and other vampire creatures you control get +2/+1 and have flying. Like, it is good. It doesn't buff itself, so like playing a 4 mana creature that dies to lightning bolt is kind of like risky.
Well, no, it buffs itself. It says Vampire Nocturnus and other vampires.
Oh, and I'm sorry, yes.
But that the fact is, like, you have to have a black card. There's just like an element of randomness to it, and
yep,
it leads to blowouts if it dies. It's not like a permanent buff, right?
Yeah. So I'm kind of meh on it, honestly. Like,
I mean, it's a 4 mana. Like, again, like, there are so many 4 mana vampires you can play, and they all are probably very good, but like, that's not what's important for building a modern deck, right? We're interested in the 1s and 2s, and there are a lot of them. Like, there are more than, like, when you even first brought this up, there's more than I even thought there was. Like, Blood Artist is a very good vampire. Viscera Seer is a very good vampire.
I mean, even you look, Vampire Lacerator, the 2/2 for 1 that pings you if your opponent has more than 10 life, still very good, right? Like, I would play that card all day. There's a bunch of 1 and 2 mana cards that are like, they get a bonus, usually +2/+1 seems to be like the vampire buff theme. But there's Guldraz something or other at 1 mana that's a 1/1 that gets +2/+1 and Intimidate. If your opponent has 10 or less life, and then there's a one at 2 mana that is the same thing, but I think it starts as a 2/1. I've been playing them in Pauper Vampires. What is it? Oh, there's Guldraz Assassin, which I don't think is good enough.
No, that was a little slow. It's a cube powerhouse, though. Very, very, very good in cube.
Yes. There's definitely a bunch of different directions that you can go with it. Calastria Highborn is another one.
Yeah.
That's great. Like, the pieces are there.
There's even
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. There's even another one from the new set. There's I think it's a 1 mana 2/1 that gets flying.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's a Savannah Lion that gets flying if you have the Blessing of the City, I think.
Yeah, the ascend mechanic, which
yep,
seems like it's definitely harder to pull off in a deck that's interested in 1 mana 2/1s than it is in like a control deck where you can just like play lands and get there. But at the same time, you're probably already in for a 1 mana 2/1 with a relevant creature type because it can get buffed. So, this card could be very powerful, and that could just add to, the thing that Vampires was missing that just it did not have was a true 2 mana Lord, right?
Right.
But it has that now, so that's the thing that's most interesting to me, is that we got this new 2 mana Lord. It's something the archetype just did not have at all. Maybe that's enough to push it over. Yeah,
I mean, Legion's Landing, Indulgent Aristocrat at 1/1 lifelink, 2 sack a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. Like, this is an insane card. Oh yeah, it's just called Guldraz Vampire. And then what is the 2 mana one? Who knows? All right, I'm losing my mind. Oh, it's called Ruthless Cullblade. It's a 2 mana 2/1 that gets +2/+1 as long as your opponent has 10 or less life. Insolent Neonate, Vampire Lacerator, like a Blood Mad Vampire, 4/1. That's 2 mana off of Madness. Falcon Wrath Gorger. Like, these are all like nutty cards. Bloodchief Ascension is insane. Like, it's another, like, you gain life. Kalitas, like 4 mana Kalitas, also a vampire.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
I mean, well, Kalitas was always a vampire, but Kalitas Trader Get is like a nutso card.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and like if you look at this, there's been a ton of vampires in in Modern Magic specifically, but they just never had a 2 mana Lord. So this certainly is opening up doors for the vampire archetype, I guess.
Yep, I'm in it, deep in it. What else? Slaughter the Strong. It's poor guy weeping over his lost dinosaur. Do you have the text of that one up?
I believe it's 1 white. Each player chooses 4 power of creatures and sacrifices the rest.
Yes. Yep. Slaughter the Strong, which that's a rough translation because it was spoiled in Russian. I don't know what the final name of it's going to be. Yeah, 1 white sorcery. Each player chooses any number of creatures he or she controls with total power 4 or less, then sacrifices the rest. Tokens, sideboard, great. Hate Bears, sideboard, very good. Like keep my Thalia and Leonin Arbiter. You get to keep 1 creature. Maybe. Great.
You definitely don't get to keep a Gurmag Angler.
You do not get to keep a Gurmag Angler. But it hits, right? Like Gurmag Angler, hexproof creatures. Like this could be the Bogle's Mirror Breaker.
Sure. I mean, that's not 0.
Yeah, yep.
Although it would kill your own Boggle, right? So
yeah,
that's
depending.
probably not great.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have a follow-up Gladecover Scout in your hand, but I think mostly for white decks that are interested in if you're already playing Dusk Dawn, like this might be another conditional sideboard slot. Like this plays really well with Mirren Crusader.
It's good with Mirren Crusader. It's really good with Geist of St. Traft.
Yeah, so I think this is probably will take a little while to get adopted, but I think like Settle the Wreckage and a lot of the conditional wraths that are coming through the pipe, I think it will start to see some kind of adoption in specific decks.
Very, very good in wall decks.
Super good in wall decks.
I don't know why you're playing a wall deck, but if you're playing a wall deck, it's just like a 1 mana red stuff.
Sure.
Tribal walls, we did it.
Oh, dude, you have no idea how many times I made tribal walls. Hey, dude, Rolling Stones is super good.
Actually, it's probably really good in a Doran deck, too.
Yep. Yeah, great Doran.
I don't know why we're playing Doran, but if we're playing Doran, this card's absurd.
Yes. Yeah, Rolling Stones, baby. 1 or white. Walls may attack as though they weren't walls. The Oracle text is a little bit cleaner, but
sure.
Hey, 69 cents. Spec that baby. Don't spec. Do not buy
don't buy
Rolling Stones. You had Deep Root Elite on here, and I don't remember what that card does. So,
it's a 2 mana 1/1, 1 and a green for a 1/1 Merfolk. That says whenever Deep Root Elite or another Merfolk enters the battlefield, you may put a +1/+1 counter on target Merfolk you control.
Got it.
Oh, not him. Just whenever another Merfolk. Sorry. Now, again, we're not positive. This is probably not better than the other Lords that Merfolk plays because it doesn't immediately give the buffs, but If Merfolk got interested in +1/+1 counters for whatever reason, this could be powerful enough. Again, it's more just that it is a 2-drop with a relevant creature type than anything. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like screaming play me, but it is playable.
Yeah, I think it probably goes in a in a Miracle Grow deck more than like a straight Merfolk deck.
Sure.
Like tribal Miracle Grow with like Deeproot Champion, Deeproot Elite, Deeproot Waters, and then there's plenty of Merfolk spells. Yeah. Oh, womp. I forgot. It was River Herald's Boon. But like River Herald's Boon with Deeproot Champion is insane because he becomes a 4/4.
Yeah.
And that's legit. I'm trying to remember if the tribal Merfolk spells are any good.
Some of the school is sweet.
Yeah. So Aquatex Will, no. Muro Commerce, 2 mana, tribal enchantment, untap. At the end of your turn, untap all Merfolk you control. Interesting, but some in the school.
Kind of go with Kumena.
Yeah. Yeah, really good with, actually.
Yeah, I don't think it's that great with it, but it's fine.
I mean, it curves out like, in that theoretical like mid-range Merfolk deck that doesn't exist yet. Like, I could see this being playable.
Sure, I mean,
because then you're just drawing like 2 to 3 cards every turn cycle.
Sure, I mean the Deeproot Miracle Grow is interesting, but I don't really think that's where this card's going. It is more of just like a 2-mana Lord effect. The Deeproot Elite, I guess.
Yep.
So it, I don't think like Merfolk, while not actually having a ton of playable modern Merfolk, has a ton of 2-mana Lords, so it's not really looking for this effect per se. But
right,
if you wanted more, it's there. So, and it's cheap enough that it's worth looking at. So
yeah, and I mean you can kind of like you can use this to pump your Mutavaults, which is interesting.
That actually is very interesting.
So I mean I don't hate it. Like, I don't know if it's the backbone of the core like blue-green Merfolk deck, but it is interesting. Like that, if you compare it to the Muro Regery, like tap untap when you cast a Merfolk spell, I think this is probably going to be more relevant more of the time.
Sure. I mean, it's sometimes just cheaper too. It just comes down pretty quick. So
yeah.
Let's go with Aether Vials too.
Sure. Ravenous Chupacabra. I am so happy that these cards exist. Like the fact that we have Chupacabras now, and not only do we have Chupacabras, we have potentially 8 of them. You can play 8 Cabra. Chupacabra. Well, yeah. Well, they're beast horrors. But hey, horror tribal, man. We've already covered that.
Does not get bounced by Thing in the Ice.
That is exactly correct. Thing in the Ice, another modern card that does not see enough play.
True. That's true.
Card very strong. So the Chupacabra from Ixalan is Lurking Chupacabra.
Wildly unplayable.
Potentially playable.
Sure.
Hear me out. Oh, it's coming. I'm going deep, and it's going to be great. So, Lurking Chupacabra is the one from Ixalan. 3 and a black for a 2/3. Whenever a creature you control explores, target creature an opponent controls get -2/-2 until end of turn.
Okay.
Not great.
No.
But in the Black-Green Explore Landfall deck with Tireless Tracker and a card that we're going to talk about in a second, then it becomes amazing.
See, I don't know that it becomes right,
it becomes playable.
It could elevate itself into the realm of playability.
Yes.
I'll give you that.
Okay. So that's a stretch. However,
that's a lot of work for...
Ravenous Chupacabra, the one from Rivals, is great.
Yeah, this one is a lot better than the other one.
2 black, Beast Horror, 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. Necrotol has at times been a format-defining card. Granted, that was a long time ago. But if you're playing an Eldritch Evolution deck, you're playing a Chord deck, like any of those toolboxy kind of things, having something at 4, which is the Necrotol cost, you lose the first strike, you gain a point of toughness, but you lose the terror restriction. So like Necrotol is from a time when black creatures or like black effects had a hard time dealing with other black creatures and artifact creatures. So you see a lot of those, destroy target non-black, non-artifact creature, like that text line used to be very common. And Necrotol is an extraordinarily old card. This, as an updated Necrotol, I love this card.
Oh, yeah. It's great. Auto-inclusion to a bunch of cubes.
Sure.
If Birthing Pod was still legal in Modern, this would just be a slam dunk include in that deck. It's very, very good there.
Yes.
But there are Birthing Pod-like effects that see play. The one I'm thinking of is Eldritch Evolution. Kind of like a one-time Birthing Pod-esque effect. And this is playable there. I mean, you can tutor your Voice of Resurgence into a 4-mana 2/2 that kills their thing, and then you can tutor this out into like a Grave Titan or whatever 6-drop is going to win you the game, because a lot of them probably will. But
many of them will, yes.
I mean, getting a 6-drop off of what was essentially a removal spell is pretty good. So,
yes, huge.
You can return it to play with Revelark if that matters.
Strong.
Yep, that is doable. Bring back with Dusk Dawn. We mentioned that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that is relevant.
There are places where it just, it's very low cost to play something that kills a creature, right? You're just happy to do that anyway. So,
yeah,
it's tutorable with Chord.
Oh, man.
I don't know.
1 or less. Oh man, I thought there was like a hot second where I was like, "Oh man, it gets hit by Proclamation of Rebirth," but it doesn't.
It's not. No,
it's not. Too bad.
Yeah,
not really too bad. That would be stupid. But
stupid,
but yeah, this off of Dusk Dawn, very nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just it's a pretty simple card. It's a 4-mana 2/2 that kills a creature, but that is strong enough for Modern, as it turns out. So
yeah. Silent Gravestone is one of those cards that is really easy to misevaluate. Silent Gravestone is a 1-mana artifact. It says cards in graveyards can't be the target of spells or abilities, and it has 4 tap, exile Silent Gravestone, and all cards from all graveyards, draw a card. Is this better than Relic of Progenitus? No. But it's not Relic of Progenitus. That's not the point of playing this card. This card, mark my words, calling it now, called shot. This card will single-handedly be responsible for the return of Dredge to Tier 1 in Modern.
I kind of think Dredge is already Tier 1, but this is very, very good in Dredge. I agree with you.
So you play this on 1, and you can't get Surgical Extracted. You can't get Scavenging Oozed out of the game. You can't get, game 1, it's just protects you from, incidental stuff. and it also like shuts off your opponent's snapcasters. Like it takes the graveyard value out of other people's decks and protects your graveyard. Like more in Legacy, but I have advocated for it in the past, in Modern as well, is people play Ground Seal. Like 1 and a green, ETB, draw a card. Cards in graveyards can't be the target of spells or abilities. It is primarily a sideboard card. I feel like at 1 mana, Silent Gravestone is probably main deckable.
I don't know if it's main deckable, but it could replace those cards.
See, I think that just like upping your game 1 percentage against decks that you just like accidentally lose to is something. And I think it's worth considering.
I would give you that. I think that is something, and that is definitely worth considering. I totally agree with that. But to me, like, the point of this card is that it is the hate for the hate, right? Where, like, it has the 4-tap exile cards from all graveyards. Sure, like, and there are cards that this is good against. I think it's kind of more, it kind of feels like more, like, it's printed in standard, obviously, so to me it feels like a counter for Scarab God, which I think is what it is, but like accidentally it becomes like one of the best sideboard cards Dredge can have to beat the cards that you said, like the Surgical Extractions and the Scavenging Uses. And in that scenario, it's really annoying to play against. It's really annoying because these decks already have this awesome game 1 win percentage, and they kind of lose just games 2 and 3 because their deck just doesn't function through hate well. And when this turns off some of the hates that your opponents can have, well, then all of a sudden your deck gets a lot better, right? Like, it's just an awesome sideboard card because, it's going to hose some number of cards that your opponents are going to have every post-board game. Now, that being said, I don't actually love it in Modern because a lot of the very commonly played graveyard hate this doesn't work against. It is very good against Surgical Extraction, and it does beat Scavenging Ooze, but after that, it doesn't really do anything against Relic. It doesn't really stop Rest in Peace. It doesn't do anything against Leyline of the Void. So, I think that this card definitely has applications. It is very good in Snapcaster Mage. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it definitely has applications, but to me, this feels more just like a better Ground Seal for like lands and Legacy, for instance. I think this card's very, very good there. So,
sure.
It is interesting. I don't think it's going to end up being a huge deal, but it is one of those cards that interacts with the Graveyard Zone for 1 mana, essentially. So, it is always just a card you need to have on your radar of playable Modern sideboard cards.
Yep. Agree.
But that is not the big deal about this set to me. The big deal is that it is kind of establishing this trend of hate cards that hate cards, right? Where it's like the counter to your hate card.
Yep.
And while this one doesn't quite get there in Modern.
Yeah. Well, before we get to the actual real deal endgame, let me talk about Enter the Unknown.
Oh, sure.
And then, all right, Enter the Unknown. Best card in the set. Calling it.
It's a bold claim.
I think it is the. I don't know if it's the best card in the set, but I think it's pretty close.
I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I could easily see this being the best card in the set.
Yeah,
it's a bold call.
I think it's the, like, unassumingly the strongest, like, a turn 2 play off of, like, Noble Hierarch that, like, for a mid-range deck is insane. Like, it's ramp from your ramp that also ramps you, right? Like, it's like double ramp or buff a creature, you get, like, I said it when Ixalan came out, and I will say it again, Explore is an insanely powerful mechanic. It just is. So...
Well, it certainly can be. I mean, this is interesting because it's almost literally the card Explore, where it just doesn't draw a card, but it instead explores, and then you play the land. But
yes.
The point for me is that there's already a deck in Modern that's seen a lot of success that is very interested in this effect. So it's an interesting card. I mean, you want to put this in your Amulet Titan decks.
Yep.
It plays there,
Yeah.
it draws you a land, then you get to play it, and, 2 or 3 of these. The fact that it costs 1 mana is awesome, because you can tap your Simic Growth Chamber, cast your Serum Visions, draw your cards, set it up so there's a land on top of your library, cast this, draw a land, play the land. Like, that's pretty good. It's pretty good in that deck.
Yeah. So I'm super high on this card for, like I said, like green mid-range decks. Like this in Abzan, amazing. This in Jund, even theoretically, if you were going to go higher up on like the casting cost thing, because this takes decks that don't normally, or that aren't normally interested in getting to 5 mana, like, over the hump, because you don't have to, like, it doesn't necessarily let you cheat on mana directly in the way that, like, Traverse or Caravan Vigil would. It doesn't replace a land, but it gives you consistency of land drops. It gives you card selection in green, which once again is like, shouldn't be a very common thing, but is becoming a very common thing.
Yep.
Or let me say, previously hadn't been, is now.
Well, green doesn't even usually get card selection, right? It's mostly just card draw, like card advantage, and/or it has ways to get card advantage, but it's never had like a whole bunch of scry. Like, that's more of a blue effect.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, so I'm super down with this. I definitely want to make like an Explore, Tireless Tracker, lands matter-y type deck, with like, just value. So that's that sick value all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I think the card's good. It's to me, it's not as interesting in like fair decks as it is in decks that have very high land counts, where the Explore, that also are playing creatures.
Yeah.
Where the Explore is very, very likely to draw a card. Because when it's scry, it's obviously not as good as draw a card, right? Like, you'd just rather draw the card than scry.
Sure.
And the 2 decks that play like an absurd amount of land are the Amulet Titan deck and the Scapeshift deck. They both happen to be Primeval Titan decks, and they both happen to be very interested in ramping up to Primeval Titan. So, this helps in all of those scenarios. So I think this could have a home in Modern. We'll have to see how broken it actually is, because it does have the downside of needing you to have a creature in play for it to be castable. Sure. So it's not truly a 1-mana spell, but it's a very nice tempo play to, like, on turn 3, cast your Courage Tribuilder, cast this, play a land, boom. Like, that can be very strong. So, Summer Bloom's a card that got banned, and it was, I mean, these are similar cards. It's a similar card to Summer Bloom. It's not, I don't think it's as good, but it also costs less mana, so it's interesting. It's very interesting.
All right, so now the big contender, the actual thing that is going to impact Modern the most, the opposite of Blood Moon, Blood Sun.
Yep.
A little on the nose.
A little bit.
But there are some sun. There's a lot of sun-related things in the set. They reference the Star of Extinction and blah blah blah. So, Blood Sun 2 and a red for an enchantment should ring a bell. When Blood Sun enters the battlefield, draw a card, because why not? And all lands lose all abilities except mana abilities. A deceptively simple line of text that really, really, really has a ton of implications. Oh, God. So
this card's no fun, man. This card is no fun.
Like, so this is land hate that doesn't hate Tron or Eldrazi. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting land hate, right?
I want to like this card because it does do some really cool things. It hates out my least favorite deck in Legacy, which is lands. So, like, with this in play, Dark Depths is a legendary snow land that doesn't do anything. So I'm in, right? Like, I'm totally down with that. And it turns off all the things that would do whatever, right? So, like, you can't Thespian Stage, you can't, Vesuva, like, none of that stuff works anymore. In Modern, this becomes Tron's main deckable anti-Blood Moon tech, because the abilities of Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, Urza's Tower are all mana abilities. They are just complicated mana abilities. Like,
well, it's not anti-Blood Moon, right? It doesn't, like, stop Blood Moon.
It doesn't stop Blood Moon, but it turns off other people's lands.
Sure.
Like, it turns off your opponent's fetches.
It's like a one-sided... It can almost be like a one-sided Armageddon in some scenarios, but it's one-sided land hate.
Yeah, so it's just... It's a super weird card. It has a ton of implications. So, like, some of the things that it does, it removes the bounce from the Ravnica bounce lands, so you just play them,
and they enter untapped. So you just have straight soul lands that tap for 2 colors.
Yeah, so that's nuts. Yeah, so that's insane. Shocklands,
which, by the way, makes this card completely outrageous in Amulet Titan.
Yes,
but also, like, not good in Amulet Titan because some of the land effects, like, don't do anything.
Sure.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, so, like, it turns off Slayer's Stronghold and Legion whatever. But boo-hoo. Like, who even cares? So it turns all of your shock lands into OG dual lands because they enter the battlefield untapped, and they the shock trigger doesn't happen. It turns City Brass into just an untapped 5 mana or 5 color, like, rainbow land with no pain. Let's see what else.
Well, like, I think you hit it. I mean, it turns off fetch lands, which you mentioned before, which is a really big deal, big part of the card.
Well, I guess the biggest thing for Tron, and the reason that Tron would play this main deck, is because it turns off Ghost Quarter. So no Ghost Quarter, no Tech Edge,
no, like, Field of Ruin, which has become a very relevant card recently.
Like, that is the thing. So,
I mean, let's do, like, a little cost benefit analysis of this card real quick to kind of give people an idea of what exactly this card is going to do in Modern, right? So I think comparable cards immediately are Blood Moon, right? I mean, that's just the instant calling to it. Is that this is, I guess, it's not really a spiritual successor, but it is in name and kind of intent a successor to Blood Moon.
Sure.
But they're both legal in the same format, so theoretically you could play both, and you could play either, but any deck that could cast one could play the other, right? But they're very different cards. They are not similar really at all, and they're both kind of intended to do different things, and one is certainly going to be better than the other in almost any deck that could play either of them, right? The nice thing is they both hose Valakut, which I'm in for. But...
Same.
The biggest thing with this is that it turns off fetch lands to me. Now, Blood Moon never turned off fetch lands. Blood Moon stopped you from fetching and would lock people out of the game, but when you constructed your deck, you could... Almost every Blood Moon deck plays fetch lands with the intent of having them become mountains once Blood Moon is in play, right?
Sure.
So you kind of have this ability to fix your mana, find your basics, and then, just have the extra fetches you draw afterwards become mountains. But this card, those lands just don't do anything, so you need to kind of be playing it in a deck that doesn't play fetches at all. Now, you could play it in a deck that just has, very low mana requirements, but I think ideally you'd play in a deck that just doesn't have fetches because it just is so good against them. And I think, in general, for land hate, it's worse than Blood Moon, which is why this says draw a card and Blood Moon does not.
Well,
By the way, Blood Moon should not say draw a card on it, so that's a good thing.
Well, that was also... Blood Moon is a 22-year-old card, so...
Yeah, that's a really dumb card, but...
But
point aside, I think you touched on it. The immediate home that people came up with for this was Tron, and in that place it makes so much sense. Tron is already a deck that can play red mana, does play red mana, doesn't play fetch lands, so it doesn't hose the fetch lands, and doesn't actually play very many lands that have activated abilities outside of mana abilities. So it's really good in that scenario. It is also a cantrip, which the deck already plays a ton of because it's super interested in that effect. Mm-hmm. And it hoses other land decks without hosing you. So it is Tron's answer to Valakut. It is Tron's answer to Ghost Quarter. And when all Tron cares about is leveraging land advantages, this is kind of the perfect hate for your hate card, essentially. I mean...
And we have not even, this is all, level 0 kind of stuff. We have not even, really dug into all of the implications of this deck, or this card. And so, the week one of, man, this card is nuts, is true, but also, it's gonna get worse.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this... We haven't found everything with it yet, for sure.
Yeah. There's I'm sure, a bunch of weird rules stuff that is just going to make... this doesn't turn off Urborg, which is weird.
That is weird.
Because the type change happens after... Or no, the type change happens before this ability gets applied.
Dude, who knows? Suffice it to say, it doesn't turn off Urborg.
It doesn't turn off...
Weird card.
Yes, Urborg is also a weird card. But, that's a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, I just don't know.
Well, to me, the biggest thing about it is just that it hoses fetch lands, and Modern is so much a fetch land format.
Sure.
I mean, just look at the deck. Look at the Modern deck you play. There's a good chance it has a fetch land in it if the deck is not named Tron, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, some generic deck. But, if you're playing a Modern deck that doesn't have fetch lands in it, you need a reason to play other lands that aren't fetch lands because the fetch lands are so good. Right. And generally the reason is that you have lands that have activated abilities on them. Mm-hmm. Which this also hoses, so it's just so
turns off
good.
Creature lands,
it turns off creature lands. It turns off I mean, yeah, I was thinking like Mutavault is a big reason to play a non-fetch land deck, but it turns that off. It turns off Search for Azcanta, which is, kind of why I think this card is printed in Standard, is to turn off the flipped lands, but
Sure.
this does a very good job of that in Modern too, and it just seems like it hoses everything except Tron lands kind of in the format, which is strange, but that's kind of what it does, and oh man.
Yep. So, once again.
Yep. Oh man.
Red Green Tron is back. This card is insanely good, and if you are not playing it in your Tron deck, you are wrong.
Well, this card is also really good against Death Shadow, as it turns out.
Yeah. Yep.
It's really hard for Death Shadow to get its shadows down, or to get its shadows in play when they can't fetch shock themselves.
Yep.
It might be a little slow, but the fact that it just draws a card makes it so outrageous.
Yep.
Like, it can completely lock you out of a game, and they didn't even have to spend a card doing it.
Yeah. No, I'm super in on this card. It's pre-ordering for like $10, which is pretty nuts.
I mean, that could go down, but this already feels like a mistake to me, man.
Yes, strong.
Chalk this up as the card I wish they hadn't printed from the set.
Yeah, it has that unintended consequences feel to it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I think this.
No, that's fair.
I think you hit it. I think this card is probably going to prove to be a mistake ultimately.
I think so. I mean, it might not. It is interesting that it, is hate against some land-based decks, so it does do that. But to me, it feels like it punishes the fair decks and rewards the unfair decks, and the unfair decks were generally better than the fair decks to begin with. So, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but
Yep.
I think it's pretty easy to say this is going to be the most impactful card from the set, and I don't think that's going to be close.
Yeah. Pauper is a thing. I have been playing and enjoying the hell out of Pauper online right now. It just got a big bump in popularity. Channel Fireball, at the encouragement of the professor from Tolarian Community College, actually added paper Pauper events to the GPs upcoming, first 3 GPs of the year, I believe. Format is fun as heck. Like, it's fun legacy as far as I'm concerned.
It's also very cheap.
It is very cheap.
Very easy to get into.
Yeah, I mean, I had a ton of cards already for the mono black control deck that I built. The rest of the cards that I needed cost me less than $20. The only exception is
Oubliette.
No, I didn't do Oubliette.
Smart.
I'm either gonna play Faceless Butcher or just Unmake. Because like Oubliette has a bunch of, like, I get it, I understand why people play it, but it's weird because you can't use it to like take the counters off of something, because it explicitly says that you put the counters back on when it comes back into play.
Sure.
And like for 3 mana, if you need an exile effect, like I said, I'll play Unmake, and if you desperately want whatever, then you can play Faceless Butcher because it's the same card. It's 4 mana instead of 3, but and you just you get to play Dark Ritual, which is great. You play it's like a bunch of neat old cards that aren't powerful enough for Modern Legacy, but the Pauper format is a great little home. I'm playing Pestilence, Crypt Rats, Chittering Rats, all the Monarch cards from Conspiracy, like I think each color has a common card that makes you the Monarch. And like those are interesting. So like that mechanic, which doesn't see play really outside of Commander, which is a very cool mechanic, it's
super relevant in the format.
Is super relevant in Pauper, right? Like it's like that is really cool to me. What else? Grave Scrabbler is legal. That's awesome. Like
there's a ton of sweet decks in Pauper.
So much cool stuff, right? Like but what I found, and it sort of surprised me a little bit, is I have a ton of these cards.
Oh yeah, every Magic player should. It's just commons, man. You probably have a huge box of them sitting in your room, just on a shelf or in your closet or wherever, you know. And it's not hard to build these decks. In fact, I have, I'm thinking of one guy in particular at my local store who plays Pauper a lot, who, isn't, he's not a super well-to-do off person. He, works a job and, pays his bills, but he's not, made of money, and he wants to get into Modern to play with, the people that play Modern there, but he doesn't have enough money to buy multiple Modern decks. It's just not realistic for some people. But he, he's a pretty spiky player and wants to switch decks and kind of learn how to play different stuff. And he comes in one day and he's like, hey, I got 4 Pauper decks and I got them for like less than $100 total. And it's like, wow, dude, that's actually kind of awesome. Like, that's really cool that you're just able to do that for less than 1 Modern deck total. Now, I don't think this format's necessarily better than Modern. I don't think it's nearly as manicured or played, but it does some different things and lets you play with cards you wouldn't get to play with otherwise. And Wizards is actually taking an interest in it recently by printing cards in supplementary sets that have really changed the format. Like you said, Monarch cards. There's also... this is happening a lot with Modern Masters and Eternal Masters, where cards are downshifted from like rare and uncommon to common. Yep. And those really influence the format. I mean, we got Seeker of the Way was a big one that the format really liked. In fact, the Pauper deck I'm playing plays Jesse and Thief, which is an uncommon from I think Origins, but got downshifted in the last Modern Masters, or Iconic Masters even. And it's a really sweet card. It's not, by Modern standards, it's not like even playable. I don't even think it's like remotely playable in Modern, but it's a sweet card and it's fun to play with, and I enjoy playing with it. I like the play experience it gives. And the format is just interesting. It's easy to get into. It's fun to build decks. It's very easy to brew, which I think a lot of people like. It's easy to just, hey, I want to brew this deck and try it out. How much is that going to cost me? Oh, $8.50. Like, oh, all right, I'm in. We'll brew this. So yeah, it's cool, but we're not a Pauper podcast, right? We're a Modern one.
Yeah, God.
But,
that's my understanding.
For now.
But it is, right, it is experiencing a jump in popularity.
Oh, yeah.
And we wanted to talk about sort of Pauper for the modern player.
Well, hey, side note before we get into this.
Yes.
If anybody's listening that has any pull on this, please let Whir schedule competitive Modern or Pauper events. You can't schedule them as competitive. You can only schedule them for fun right now. So I don't know if that's even possible. But please do that so that people can schedule competitive Modern Night at their local store.
All right.
But please continue.
Okay. So there you go. You heard it here. Definitely get on that. Whoever is in charge of that. I don't even know who that would be. I don't know who's in charge. I don't know who's in charge for. We can find out. But we wanted to just touch on the cards that you have that are like Pauper staples.
Well, even more than that, we were just talking about Pauper, and it was like, hey, you get to play some cards you wouldn't normally play, but there's also some really broken cards in Pauper that are like, there's some that are just too good for Modern. Like there's some cards that there's no way they would let you play with in Modern that are just commonly played in Pauper, and they're not. They're obviously very good there, but the format doesn't feel too busted. So
no, the main combo deck is like a Tireless Tribe, inside out combo deck. There's a Storm deck that plays like, what is it, Reaching Vines or something like that.
Well, there was a bunch of Storm decks that are really broken, but they've been very, very neutered.
Where is it? Sprouting Vines. So it plays like Sprouting Vines and then all the normal stuff that you would see in like a Storm deck, and then the combo kill or the win condition is like just some like X. It's like a fireball type spell. So you just like make a ton of mana, but like Rite of Flame is legal. There's just like a bunch of really nutty rituals and stuff like that. So like Rite of Flame is an insane card. It is banned in Modern. Busted. Right, like Rite of Flame. So you get to play with Rite of Flame, Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm, Gitaxian Probe, Gush. Like, if you like blue decks, come play Pauper, man, because it's nuts over here.
Yeah, no, but
like you can play 4 Gush, 4. Oh yeah, you can't even play 4 Gush in Vintage.
No. It honestly doesn't even feel that broken. It feels actually fine. But past all that, it sparked a debate. We wanted to come up with the best common for each color in Modern. Cards that, maybe we were playing in Pauper or see Pauper play that, are Modern powerhouses, I guess. So we kind of put together a little list of, the best of each type. And let's run through them real quick.
Boom. All right.
Red. Yeah, so red, I think this one's pretty obvious. If you've played Modern before, you have definitely cast Lightning Bolt, and correct. Lightning Bolt was a common, and it's printed multiple times at common, and Wizards stopped printing it at common because they realized it was way too good to be a common. It's an uncommon now and only in Masters sets, but still. It's great. It's the best red common in the format. It's the most played card in the format, and it's a common.
Yep. Blue, you get Serum Vision. Cards, it's good, man. I honestly haven't seen Serum Vision get played because you have Ponder, Preordain.
Well, that's the funny thing is that this is the best blue common in Modern. It sees no play in Pauper because there's just better versions available.
Yep. Yeah,
and I think it's the best blue common in Modern by like a wide margin.
Yeah, I would have said Gitaxian Probe, but we've already solved that problem.
Yeah, that one's gone.
Yep, but it's still full force in Pauper.
Oh yeah,
all the Gitaxian Probes.
Yeah, there's Gitaxian Probes, there's Ponders, there's Preordains, there's Brainstorms, which ironically isn't even that good in Pauper, but still very, very good card.
Yeah, there's so few fetches that it's just not really an issue.
No, but the card's still great.
Yeah, because like Evolving Wilds is just eh.
Yeah.
But the only semi-bitter pill that you will need to swallow, I will say, is for a lot of decks you need Ash Barrens, which was like a commander card, and it's a land that has basic land cycling 1. So that is functionally your fetch land.
It's like a better Evolving Wilds, essentially.
Yeah. So that's
nice
the only that's the only like kind of like semi crummy thing, I guess.
Sure. I mean, that's gonna be due for a quick reprint once Pauper becomes a little bit more popular. But
oh yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be like everywhere.
Sure. But what do we got for black? Your specialty here.
All right, so this was a toss up because originally, like my first thought was Duress,
Dress is a good one. Dress is a very good call.
And then Gurmag Angler, which is like a format staple, and rightly so.
You're probably top like 10 creature in Modern easily.
Yeah. And also very popular in Pauper.
The card's busted in half in Pauper. So good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because you also get Thought Scour.
Yeah.
Totally other. This is a whole other discussion. And then you had suggested Street Wraith, and I don't think I have ever seen Street Wraith get played in Pauper. And granted, I'm not like grinding, Pauper or anything like that, but I haven't seen any decks that play it, but there probably are decks that should play it.
Well, I don't think... Yeah, you could play Street Wraith in Pauper, but there's not really like an incentive like there is in Modern with Death Shadow.
Right.
But you can play it in Pauper. You can play... Exhume is an illegal card in Pauper, so...
Yeah.
You can cycle Street Wraith and then cast Exhume, and you have a 3/4 Swamp Walk in play, which may or may not be good enough. We don't know, but the point is that it's not the best. It's not the best Pauper cards in Modern. It's the best commons in Modern, right? And Street Wraith is the second most played creature in Modern somehow, even though it's not really a creature at all. I mean, it is, but it's not, right? It's just a way to lose 2 life and draw a card. Right. But to me, my problem with putting it in black was that it just isn't really a black card. It's just a colorless card that cycles and you lose 2 life, right? Like,
yep.
It is a black card, so if you want to count it as a black card, it's probably the best common in black, but if you're not counting it as a black card, then we're going to call Gurmag Angler.
Yeah. Yep. Strong agree. So that's that for black. Here, I'll do green, and then you can do white.
I actually thought green was really interesting. We had a good debate about this one.
Yeah, so green, what was the stuff we went over?
Search for Tomorrow was a very quick one. Search for Tomorrow is a really good Magic card.
Secure Tri-Builder.
Also very good. Any Rampant Growth.
There's a bunch of them.
Farseek was common in Ravnica.
Yes.
So all of those land accelerants, all very, very good. Llanowar Elf, Elvish Mystic.
And then as we were talking about it, I was like, oh, duh, it's Ancient Stirrings.
Yep.
And like the thing about that is, right, Ancient Stirrings is one of those cards that, like, not unlike Street Wraith, doesn't feel like a green card.
No, but it's definitely a green card, yeah.
I mean, it is definitely a green card, but like,
it's a green card for colorless decks, right? But
Dig 5.
It's way too good, obviously.
It's so good.
Yeah. I mean, we've hit on this before. We've hit on previous episodes, but
yes.
I think suffice it to say, it is definitely the best green common in Modern.
Strong, yes. I believe that is correct. So, take us through white and gold.
Sure. Well, white, for me, has a little special place in my heart because I've been playing a mono-white Hate Bears deck recently, and there were other cards that you could have put at common, but none of them, to me, came close to Thraben Inspector, which I think is interesting because it's the only card on this list at all printed in the last, 10 years, which could say something historically about White's power level, but past that, it also says that Thraben Inspector is an awesome Magic card. And, when you're making a list that contains Lightning Bolt and Serum Visions and Ancient Stirrings, yeah, you're doing something right. This card's a lot better than people think.
Good company. White card draw.
Yeah.
It
costs 1 mana, and you get 2 permanents, which is always more relevant than it seems like it should be. It enables so many things.
Ascend.
Yep.
Right? You're 1/5 of the way. Or no, more than that.
Yeah, 3/10.
3/10.
30% of the way there.
30% of the way there on turn 1.
Yep. Well, and it gives you an artifact, which just, as we've said before, is relevant in Modern because there's so many artifact-related cards. The card is very good. We really like it, so...
Yes. Play...
I'm in love with Raven Inspector. I am currently obsessed with blinking him with Eldrazi Displacer. so you got that 5-mana draw card in white action.
Blink, blink. Whatever.
Yep, but he's a powerhouse. We call him the Thrabes, and he's here to stay.
I think Thraben Inspector is a woman.
Oh, it could be. She. My fault. It's hard to tell.
It is hard to tell, because that dowdy, sort of like disapproving look.
Guy or girl, Thraben Inspector is definitely disgusted at whatever they are expecting.
Thraben Inspector is absolutely not pleased with what she sees. I think it is a woman.
It could be.
But anyways, regardless of which, largely irrelevant, but still interesting.
Oh yeah. That's. I mean, to me, that just says a lot. That like,
Thraben Inspector is one of the best cards printed in the last.
Definitely one of the best commons.
Oh yeah, certainly.
I mean, it was a powerhouse in Standard, and people didn't even realize how good it was for a long time. It's very interesting to me that this was printed at Common, which kind of says that they didn't realize how good it actually was, I guess. But yeah, I mean, this card sees play in Pauper. It's very good in the format. It's, I think, in one of the better decks. So, yeah. But enough about Thrabes. Let's move on to the gold cards. This one wasn't really close. Just kind of one popped in my head right away, and that was just, as it turned out, the best gold card in Modern, I think, by a decent amount. I think it's not the best gold card in Modern. It's definitely the best gold common in Modern. And it's easily on the list for best gold cards. It's maybe top 3 or 4 of them, but Terminate, as it turns out, was a common, and it's one of the most played kill spells in the entire format, so it is the gold card we chose for best common in Modern.
Yep. And I had somebody play Agony Warp against me, and that was extremely surprising.
Oh, Agony Warp's sweet.
I was like, what is even happening to my life right now?
Hey, I played my Blue-Black Delver list. It's awesome. I had a guy play... There's a 4-mana 2/3 that I think was from Shards in white that has protection from monocolored, which every spell in my deck is monocolored except Agony Warp. I looked at it, I was like, oh, well, sorry, Agony Warp it.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's so many, like, it feels... The format itself feels like... it feels like old Magic, and it also... Like, there is, like, there are powerful cards. Like, it doesn't feel like a weak format. I just, God, so many good things. A lot of people play Dinrova Horror, which makes me really happy because that card's great.
Oh, Dinrova Horror is sweet. Shout out, though, for best gold cards in Modern. Shout out to Demonic Dread. To be fair, though, Demonic Dread is not a good card. Just the card Demonic Dread casts is generally pretty good, but...
Correct.
That's why we thought Terminate was a clear pick.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
But what do we got for artifacts, Aaron?
Well, would have been cranial plating.
I think it is cranial plating. Just it is, but yes, would have been.
Yes, cranial plating thankfully is banned because artifact lands are not banned.
Yeah, they're legal in Pauper.
So, like, Pauper Affinity is super legit. So of the commons that are artifacts that are also theoretically playable, like Expedition Map, Relic of Progenitus, it's probably Expedition Map because there is Pauper-Tron. So Expedition Map obviously is like one of the things that keeps them consistent.
Sure. I think Expedition Map's a great call. It's been one of the most played artifacts in Modern's history. I think it's objectively a stronger card than Relic of Progenitus, but Relic of Progenitus sees more play because it's less specific, I guess. It's just graveyard hate that anybody can play. So
right.
It is the most played artifact in Modern, I think. Pretty sure it's the most played artifact in Modern, and it's
I would assume
it's definitely the most played common artifact in Modern. So if you want to go by play percentage, it's Relic, but I think power level, it's Expedition Map, and that's only if we move past Cranial Plating, which is the slam dunk best common artifact in Modern. It's been a powerhouse through the entire history of Modern, in fact.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, Faithless Looting. I'm looking at the most played. Oh, so the other thing we talked about was lands, but obviously there's Pauper Tron, so clearly it's going to be the Tron lands.
Well, lands was actually kind of interesting because, like, which Tron land is the best one, right? Well, it's like, you could just say the Tron lands, right? But like, if you're picking the best pop or like common land in Modern, like, can you just pick one Tron land? Like, is Tower just better than the other ones? Like, in this debate, like, if you just, like, separate it, like, is Tower just the best common land in Modern? Because, like, Tower by itself doesn't really do anything, right? Like, you need the other two.
Well, but that's all Tron. I don't know.
Sure. No, that's fair. I think it is Tower. I think we're right on that. But you can make an argument for the artifact lands that are banned in Modern. But they're banned, so hard to argue for them. The next one was the Karoo lands. They have been in decks that got cards banned, so
sure, yep,
they're pretty good. And then I think my favorite basic land or common land is Basic Island, which
it's too strong.
Probably the best land in Magic's history. But yeah, we don't want to count basic lands because it's just, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it fits the spirit of the debate. So we're gonna go with Urza's Tower here.
Yep, Urza's Tower indeed. So the most played commons, for anyone who is curious in Modern, Lightning Bolt, Serum Visions, Opt.
Interesting, Opt made it up there so quick. By the way.
Yeah. Expedition Map, Terminate, Ancient Stirrings, Faithless Looting, Relic, Gurmag Angler, Logic Knot. Very surprising to me. Because I feel like that's really like a one of in a lot of decks, but I guess maybe we're getting into...
Well, yeah, no, it's moving up now, dude. It's recent adoption has seen Logic Knot become like a 2 or 3 of in a lot of lists that aren't playing, Gurmag Anglers or Tassigers or whatever that compete with graveyard resources.
Teamer Battle Rage, Thought Scour, Teamer Battle Rage, Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star, Desperate Ritual, Manamorphose, Lava Spike, Mana Leak, Rift Bolt.
Oh, Manamorphose was the other gold card that we missed.
Yeah.
Manamorphose is definitely comparable with Terminate, but it's not as good as Terminate, I don't think.
No.
Manamorphose
it only really sees...
It only sees playing Storm. I mean, it's the best card in the Storm deck, but only because it works so well with the other cards.
Oh, man, I forgot Devoted Druid was a common. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, Devoted Druid was definitely on there with green. It's comparable to Ancient Stirrings, but it's just, I don't know. I don't think it's as good as Ancient Stirrings.
No, it's not. Vault Scourge. That probably would have been on my list.
Vault Scourge is a good card, but it's,
Oh, freaking Simian Spirit God. I always forget that card is a common.
It's no Lightning Bolt, that's for sure.
It is certainly not that. So go ahead and put some Pauper decks together. I mean, like we said, you already have a ton of these cards, and the format's a blast. I think people would have a lot of fun with it. Also, we did do years ago, or maybe a year ago, we did do a Pauper video with the professor from Tolarian Community College on Pauper Dredge that Chris made. So I will put up a link to that, and it's a pretty good little deck. I should put it together, but I'm working on Threshold, like, because I want to play Dirty Were-Rat. Like, all the Threshold cards are so silly, and I love them. But yeah, Play Pauper. It is fun. Bring Pauper decks to GPs, and you will be happy.
Sure.
We're going to skip the deck debate for right now. We already kind of mentioned it. Spatial Contortion. The card is great. You should play it. I gained a new appreciation for bounce lands by playing Pauper. They are surprisingly good. Do I think most decks need to run like 4 of them? No, I think many decks could probably run 1 if you're also playing a lot of basics. Having a soul land is just real good.
Yeah, it can definitely be good.
So do that in your mid-range decks that play a lot of basics. Throw bounce land in there. You will likely not regret it. You might, but I don't know. Who's to say? Who's to say what's right and wrong in this crazy world?
Sure.
So before we get to the Spice Rack, you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/turn1thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at T1Thoughtseize. Zach is at A22EN. You can watch us stream at twitch.tv/T1Thoughtseize, and sponsored by our friends at Card Hoarder. You can see our YouTube videos, youtube.com/turn1thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can see all of our content on turn1thoughtseize.com. And lastly, if you are listening to us on iTunes, please rate and review us. It helps us quite a bit. Zach, you picked the Spice Rack this week. There's a bad beats story that goes along with it even. So tell me about your bad beats at the hands of Hakon, the Stromgald Scourge.
Yeah, I got worked over by Hakon playing in the league this week. Very strange card. It is a 3-mana 3/3, a colorless, a black, and a black. And it says, you may play Hakon Stromgald Scourge from your graveyard, but not from anywhere else. So you can't even cast him from your hand. It just kind of has to be in your graveyard, and then you can cast him. But it also says that as long as he's in play, you may cast Night cards from your graveyard. And whenever he dies, or whenever he's put back into the graveyard, you lose 2 life.
From play.
From play. So, the deck I was playing against was a dredge deck, but it was like a dredge value deck that was dredging Loam and Dark Blast. And it just like naturally dredged over Hakon. And then the opponent cast Hakon, and the reason Hakon's so spicy is he has a very interesting interaction with Nameless Inversion, which, as it turns out, is a night when it is in your graveyard.
Yep.
So you can cast it from your graveyard with Hakon, and then it goes back into your graveyard. And then if you have 2 more black mana, you can cast Nameless Inversion again, and you can keep doing this. And Nameless Inversion just gives a creature +3/-3, so if your creature is 3 or less toughness, it just dies. It makes combat a complete nightmare because it's an instant, so like you can attack into Hakon, and then it kills, your Hakon can kill like an X6, and it's just nonsense. It really is. I was playing my mono white Death and Taxes deck, and he got a Hakon out. He had a Nameless Inversion in his graveyard. He cast Nameless Inversion like 12 times, and I scooped it up because I wasn't beating it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know if there's a good way for you to come back from that. So
oh no, once that's going, you're done. The only thing you can really do is path Hakon, get him out of there.
Yeah,
but it was too little, too late. So
yeah, after the you could probably beat the first 6 Nameless Inversions. The second 6 probably gonna put you in the ground.
Oh yeah, buried very deep, 6 feet as it were.
Indeed. So that is that. We will push a bunch of this stuff off until next time.
Sure. Well, the one thing we're really pushing is the deck debate, and suffice it to say, I'm trying to decide between Jeskai and my mono white Taxes deck for the SCG this weekend. I guess you'll find out what I choose. So
yeah, indeed. So there you go. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Love you guys.